Greetings shippers, welcome back, and it's time for another episode of Fanversations. This time we're joined by Kat of the Seriously for Serious blog, a pop culture outing exploring various aspects of different fandoms. And today she joins me to talk about Star Trek Discovery. There was a lot of buzz around Star Trek Discovery when it first came out, and there still is some to an extent, though it has quieted, but that may change with the upcoming at the time of this recording Season 2. This video is an exploration by two Trekkie fans of Discovery, from two slightly different perspectives. So if you're interested to hear about Discovery and of course a whole bunch of other Trek, this is the Fanversation for you. Also, since it has been a while since Season 1, it's interesting to see how opinions have changed. Mine have not changed all that much. Of course, I will have all of Kat's links down below for you to check out if you're interested. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please do follow on social media to stay up to date, know when we're streaming, and just come on over and chit chat about fandom. It's a good time, I swear. These are as always long ones, so let's get to it. I actually have your article open and everything, so I can refer to it and all the other links that I have in my various tabs for Discovery. So yeah, no, because I felt I've had the Trekkiest week, because I was like, you know what, the fairest thing to do is just to watch a bunch of random episodes from every series all at once and see, like, just to compare tones and everything. So I watched a bunch of episodes I like, a bunch of episodes I hate, and Discovery. And so now I'm just like, okay.
I actually just rewatched, for my blog and in preparation for this, I rewatched all of the pilots for everything. So I rewatched everyone's pilot, and I came to the very depressing realization that no, Discovery really does have the worst pilot. And I was like, damn it, I was supposed to be defending it here.
Oh, but after rewatching all the finales, I really think that Voyager has the worst finale. I have to say, I was just like, even worse than Enterprise's holodeck episode.
Oh God, I forgot. I blocked that out. I ended at Terra Prime because that's fine. It's like a perfectly fine episode, but the weird, oh God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, Riker on the holodeck.
A decade later, like.
Riker was their chef the whole time. Oh gosh. Greetings shippers, it's Sasha here with...
Hi, I'm Kat. Also, Sunshine is also what I publish under, so.
Yeah, like pimp out all of your stuff. Do you have? Like,
all right.
Yeah.
I don't do social media because it scares me, so I don't have any of that. I tried Tumblr for like 2 weeks and gave up. But I am a pop culture blogger, so you can see me. My blog is called Seriously for Serious, because we all know pop culture is a very serious topic, and so we have to take it very seriously. So it's just seriouslyforserious.com. You can find me. I've got stuff on Star Trek. I've got stuff on Voltron. I've got stuff on books and sort of the feminist intersection of pop culture when I decide to be particularly serious. So yeah, so that's really my main thing right now.
Yes, and you got in touch with me because you wanted to talk about Star Trek and specifically Discovery, because I put feelers out there where I was like, I just want to talk not only about Trek, but also about all of the kerfuffle that is surrounding the launch of Discovery, because there are so many different ways to take it. And I was really excited when you emailed me, because I think we actually have slightly different perspectives on it, and I'm a weirdo who's like, yes, different perspectives, bring it on. So I'm really excited for that. So to get started, I guess, outline a little bit of what is your history with Trek.
So I grew up watching Star Trek, and the way that I think about it is I grew up being a Star Trek fan to me is like being a sports fan. It's just like a thing that I would watch on TV with my dad, you know? So it's like I grew up watching DS9 mostly. And really, I feel like the first time I super got into Trek was when I was 8 years old. And every day for the summer, before going to like, you know, summer day camp, whatever, I would watch an episode of Next Gen on VHS tape while I got ready for summer camp. So I watched, I think, like all of it just over the course of a summer. It was just one episode a day, which my parents were fine with. And I just watched it pretty much in order-ish, as much as you can with those old, you know, recorded from TV VHS tapes. So it's just been kind of a very omnipresent thing in my life. I've always been really into it. I have a lot of fans who are really into Star Trek. Actually, most of my guy friends are actually super interested in Star Trek. But I am the only person I know actually watched Discovery. No one else watched it. I'm the only one. I feel like the guinea pig. I'm like, okay, fine. I will watch it. I will get back to you. So yeah, so just I was very hesitant to watch Discovery actually
Mhm.
because of the whole having to pay.
Yeah.
And I think it was like a little after I think it was actually almost only a week after it actually aired. I was like, all right, I have to do this.
You
Like
gotta
I
know.
don't want to. It's just, like I'm like, no, it's too strong. The need to watch is just too strong, and I am just gonna pay the friggin' money and make it happen. And I did. And then once the season ended, I canceled it.
Yeah.
I'll restart it again when Star Trek comes back. I don't need to watch anything else on CBS.
No, that's the thing. And I think that is a huge part of what makes discussing Discovery so difficult, is how difficult it is to access and the different ways you can access, like based on the region you're in. Because I was talking to somebody else and they were like, isn't it on Netflix for you? And I was like, no, it is not on my Netflix at all. I wish it was simulcast on Netflix. No, I have to have Crave, which is this Canadian service, streaming service.
Is it different in Canada? Okay.
Yeah, like I have Netflix already, but I had Crave before because I was watching Teen Wolf on it. Because my Netflix doesn't have Teen Wolf, so I had to get it on Crave. And so when they added Star Trek to it, I was like, well, I guess I'll keep it because I want to watch Star Trek, and it's going to be on here, so it's worth keeping for that. And then they added Black Sails, so I kept it after that. But it was frustrating because I was like, well, what if I just didn't have any of this stuff and I still wanted to watch this? I wouldn't want to get the CBS All Access just for one show. Like, it would not be worth it. And so I think that was already a hurdle placed in the minds of many fans of, like, they're not even putting it out there for us. Like, clearly that's not the intent. The intent is to make money and try and cash in on this whole streaming phenomenon and catch up with all these other services. But the way it ends up playing out, I think, for a lot of people is, oh, you say you're presenting this great, new, amazing Trek, but how am I supposed to watch it? And I have to jump through all of these hoops to actually watch this thing. And so a lot of people, they've been getting the reviews, like the reviews from articles and blogs and stuff online without having actually seen it. And so you're getting a lot of, I think, colored perspectives. And a lot of people I talked to were like, I'm not even watching it. They're like, I've seen this clip, or I've read this review. And they're like, I'm not bothering. Like, it's clearly not worth my time. And so I'm like, oh dear.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing is that, like, I mean, from a business perspective, it made sense to me that they're like, okay, here's something with a huge built-in fan base. It's just kind of like what Disney is trying to do, where they're just going to pull everything
and hopefully
start
you'll follow.
Own.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they assume that and they did. Obviously, I did it. Obviously, I'm like, yes, sure, fine. I'll give you $6 a month, sure. But at the same time, like, there's a certain sense of sort of being used.
Yeah.
It's like they're taking advantage of our fandom kind of thing. They're taking advantage of our ardor and how much we care to, like, do this other, like, corporate thing. And that never feels good. I mean, the thing is, like, all of the networks, they all just manipulate you to, like, get your money. That's kind of how the game works. So I'm okay with it as much as I'm like,
I think for Star Trek, it also has that added kind of saltiness, for lack of a better word, because there's so much other stuff that's happened with the fandom, and because the Star Trek fandom is so active with, say, its recreations, its fan-made series and movies, and just even recently in fan terms, before this new service, they had put those new rules in place where it's like nothing can exceed half an hour. You can't use the costumes that you make. You have to buy the official merchandise. And so there are already so many restrictions on fans that I feel that a certain subset of fandom was already feeling very put upon. Like, you don't appreciate us. And now here you are putting this new thing out, and you already weren't listening to us. And now here's another thing that you're not listening to us on top of. Because that's the difficulty with it, especially because so many people haven't seen it. But as someone who has seen it, how do you feel about it?
So, as I put in the article I sent you, so Discovery it's neither good nor bad. It's fun. I have no qualms about it. It's a perfectly decent amount of time to spend watching TV. Yeah. It's kind of like the sort of like mid-level Marvel movies where you're just like, yeah, sure, I'll watch this, I'll have fun. It's like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like not like the most fantasticest thing ever, but you're like, I'm enjoying this. This is fun. This scratches an itch. So in general, I have a very sort of like level
plateau.
I'm just like, this is fine. I'm not mad. I'm not particularly happy. I'm just kind of like, you are fine. That said, oh my God, do I hate the Klingon redo. It is so terrible. It's just so wrong, and it's so jarring. And I'm just like, did you have, I get doing the uniforms, I get the futuristic thing,
Yeah.
I get a lot of the changes they made that people have complained about, especially the whole, people really wanted it to be more retro future looking, you know? Which, I mean, I understand because it's a prequel, and they actually did surprisingly well doing that with Enterprise. They even did the little visor things that zoom out, and you know,
and they occasionally had a button or two that they had to actually physically press. Yeah.
So they kind of did that with Enterprise, and so everyone was like, why is it so bright and shiny? I'm like, just let them play with their special effects. They're going to want to do that. The people who are, like, doing the special effects department are probably Star Trek fans who are, like, creaming themselves about this, so, like, just let them have their fun. Like, I'm not mad. But did you have to redesign the Klingons?
The Klingon redesign was really baffling, and it started everything off on the wrong foot, I feel like, because that was some of the first leaked stuff, and they were really excited about it. They were like, are you ready for Klingons? And then the Klingons came, and people were like, but why? Like, we already had the huge redesign from classic Trek to modern Trek, and we had adapted it. There was canon surrounding why it happened in the first place and everything.
Yes, they retconned it. They even retconned it, so it was fine.
And that's the thing, is that I was reading a lot of articles before the show even launched, just like prequel articles from the creators and people on staff just were like excited and explaining what they liked about it and what they were excited for. And so one of the things that I found was that there just seemed to be this almost tonal dissonance with a certain side of the fan base where they were like, don't you love our new Klingon redesign? And I was like, but you have to understand that the Star Trek fan base, a lot of it is very canon focused. They are very, very canon focused. Like, they know where the turbolift,
I am one of those.
Yeah, where the turbolift is, and like aft section G and all that kind of stuff. So if you're going to make a huge change like that to the design, it's not going to go unnoticed, and people are going to have questions. That also fell into the whole people wondering where it was going to fall in terms of timeline, in terms of universe, and all kinds of other stuff like that.
Well, I think that's where the movies didn't help, because the movies did the severe redesign of the Klingons and the Romulans and the whatever else. I didn't even bother watching 3. I'll get to it eventually.
3 was the better one. It got better.
That's good. I don't know. I am the only person who actually liked the Benedict Cumberbatch as Khan thing. I actually really liked that sort of direct flip of the original movie. I loved it. I am the only person I know who liked it. Everyone else is very angry, but I'm like, yeah, I'm good with that. That was fun. It felt fun for me, but because they recently did these redesigns in the movies and like fans were fine with it, or at least there wasn't this level of anger, they're like, oh no, we can redesign things.
Yeah.
Like, no.
I feel like what they missed was the difference between the movie audience and the series audience, because I think there was a bit of acceptance with the movie audience that, okay, we're bringing this to new people, to new everybody, and it is not attached to the canon that we have established before. And they were very quick to detach it with it being an alternate timeline. So, okay, fine, we're going to let it do its thing. They don't need buttons in this timeline. Yeah. But
they destroyed Vulcan.
I know,
I'm still not okay with it.
But then when you put something that's going to be a series, automatically you're gonna become entrenched in all of the previous lore and everything that comes before, and people have always had very high expectations of new Trek series. They always have. And what I think people forget, though, is that the first season is usually a bumpy ride, and that the media surrounding any new series has always usually been pretty like, what is this? I don't like this. This is awful. This is a betrayal to all the Trek that ever trekked. So really, it's
not. It's really not.
It rarely is. It rarely is. It's actually... Yeah, go ahead.
I actually did read this when I first started watching it, I tried to stay away from too much of the stuff, although I did... Well, we're going to have to talk about the whole Vok thing. Yeah. We will have to talk about that. But I did read this really great article. It was on SFWire. I'll send you the link so it can be, so awesome. All of you listeners can read that. And it was basically a Star Trek fan, probably about our age, late 20s-ish. She was like, I realized that the difference is that it's basically Discovery for people like us is the way that Next Gen was for people who would only watch the original series. It is a huge conceptual redesign leap, and that it's about the same amount of time difference too.
Yeah, it is.
So it's that disconnect, it's not your fault. It's not the Star Trek I grew up with. They've already had to do that, and it's already been done successfully in the sense, I mean, Next Gen is super different from the original series.
At least when it figures itself out. Like, at first, when it really struggles is actually when it's trying to be like the original series, and then it's just not in step because those values and that tone, they don't match anymore. And so when it really comes into its own is when it's finally like, no, you know, I'm going to do my own thing, and we're going to leave that there, and we're going to honor and respect it, but we're going to go in our own direction because that's just not working. No more miniskirts on the bridge. No more, like, it's not.
Oh, rewatching the pilot, men were wearing mini dresses as well.
And it was just a ranking thing.
I am so sad that they got rid of that. I was like, man, that would have been great.
It was like Zap Brannigan. It was so good.
So, I mean, it's kind of like, so, but reading that really did help me put it into perspective, because it's like, yes, this is radically different, but at the same time, it's doing the best it can, and it wants to be different, because there's nothing wrong with something wanting to reinvent itself, I think. And this is why it really reminds me a lot of the whole kerfuffle about the latest Star Wars movie, which, for the record, I freaking loved. I thought that Last Jedi was amazing, but everyone's like, oh, no. This isn't how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be X. It's supposed to be the way it's been. And it's like, okay, look, it's been a while. They're allowed to reinvent it. Sometimes they fail horribly, like with the prequels, and sometimes it, you know, succeeds. So you have to, I feel like there's a certain amount of unwillingness to change, but that's kind of always been in Star Trek, that change, because we've had 5 series.
I think that that's part of it, but I also feel that part of what's happening is why it's so difficult to accept is because this is a prequel. I feel like that if this was happening after, you wouldn't have things that were interfering retroactively with canon, which is already a huge problem for people. So it's like you're taking this thing that already looks different, so you have that visual dissonance for some people, which is going to be a big issue depending on the type of fan you are. And then you're going to have characters and moments depending on if this is like a completely 100% canonical take it as we are thing, because I'm not going to spoil because people don't know. And then that's going to retroactively change how you look at stuff. And I think a lot of people aren't happy with that, because a lot of the stuff I read actually set me up in a bit more of an adversarial stance to it before it even started, because a lot of the articles I read kind of came at it from this attitude of, well, this is better. They're like, this is better. Your Trek belongs back there, and it had all these problems with it, which yes, it did. But I still very much enjoyed it. But it was very much like, no, this is better. And like I was reading one where they were talking about how they were going to focus on Michael's character and how that was going to be a different focus. And I was like, okay, cool. But then they were like, this is the first series where the captain is not the protagonist. I was like, that's just not a true statement at all. And so then it kind of took me out of it. And I was like, is that the mindset you're coming at? Is that why you made this change? Because you thought the captain was the protagonist? I mean, I guess maybe Kirk, you could argue, was the protagonist, but it's always been kind of ensemble-y, and it's always had episodes that spread off and looked at all the various different side characters, which I think are some of my favorite episodes of all time, when they just break off and like, what's Data doing today? Oh, he's learning how to tap dance. And so...
Great episode. I was actually thinking about that. I'm like, side filler episode that is still amazing.
Yes. The wedding episode. And it's just... So I think, and again, this comes back to people having not seen it. It's coming at it from this tone that very much sounds like it doesn't understand the Trek that came before. It almost sounds like the people who made it were thinking that they're making this completely revolutionary, different thing that I think for some people really set them kind of on edge, where they're like, I don't want anything that crazy or that different. I really liked the old Trek, and I don't think there's anything wrong with liking it. And so if you haven't seen it, and in the clips that people like GIF and stuff, they don't put it in the best light. And for me personally, like I tweeted about it. I have a really hard time when people use modern colloquialisms in anything, but especially in sci-fi. For me, that creates an instant disconnect, because then I just start flashing forward to when I rewatch it in 10 years and how all of the slang is going to be outdated and lame. And I'm like, totally tubular. Let's go to the transporter. But I was like, no. So... for me, that always is a bit of a tonal disconnect, and I have a hard time. I even had a hard time when she ordered a breakfast burrito, and I was just like, can't she order a Tarkalian breakfast burrito? I don't care that it's stupid. I don't care that it's stupid when they add alien, like, things to the front of it. Delvian chocolates.
Exactly. They're just gonna, yeah, no, I feel you. I do think, though, that in a weird way, they also learned the wrong thing from Enterprise, because Enterprise, which is unfairly maligned, I actually really like it, especially season 4 when they're just like, screw everything, we're really just gonna go heavy.
When they finally figured it out, yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's like, they were really, really active in making sure that nothing was horribly retconned. I mean, there are some things, but like I even went back and looked at the timeline about how like in DS9, they're like, oh, we haven't had like a huge incident like this threatening Earth in 200 years. I'm like, oh, okay, Enterprise was 200 years before. That actually tracks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they brought back, you know, people are like, oh, but they had the Borg. It's like, yeah, and they made it clear that they have the Borg because of First Contact.
Yeah.
Like, they're actually really actively, they were really, really hardcore in making sure everything tracked, and everyone got mad and called it fan services. Like, you're not doing this right. I'm like, so I feel like there's a certain sense of like, well, we can't win, so screw it, we're just gonna do whatever the hell we want.
Yeah.
Which isn't great, but I do like understand it as just both like a content creator and also just like, look, just fine, whatever. You're going to be unhappy no matter what I do, so I'm just going to make me happy.
And I think the thing that they also didn't look at when they looked at Enterprise was that people at that time were suffering so hard from Star Trek Burnout, because it had just been series after series after series, and some of them had been running concurrently, and you had like 3 series on it, like for the briefest of instances at the same time. And so something that was already following all 3 of those and trying to kind of do its own thing, but then also be like the original, because that seems to be what people wanted. And so it's hard to look at Enterprise as your jumping off point and be like, okay, what can we learn from Enterprise? Because the context now is completely different, because we've been in a Trekless and largely large sci-fi-less world for a while. Because not only did we have Treks, we had Stargates, and we had, following that, like our Battlestar Galactica, and we were just in like a glut of so much sci-fi material. Whereas now that is definitely not the case, and a series like Trek is kind of in that space opera sense. Like, we don't. Like, we have we have dystopian sci-fi now. Yeah. It's kind of shifted. There's so much dystopia, especially with books and stuff, and the book to movie pipeline thing. It's like, I mean, we have a lot of, we certainly, but yeah, we don't have space operas anymore. I think I've read like 2 space opera series in the past like 6 years, and that's just in books, let alone in TV shows. And the ones we do have, a lot of them I find are doing that thing where they're on only one network, where they're like, oh, it's Netflix's so-and-so, or it's Hulu's this and this. And I'm like, well, I don't have Hulu. So either I can be a pirate, or I cannot watch this. Those are my 2 choices.
Yeah, basically. Well, that's the choice everyone had with Discovery, too. It's kind of like... But, you know, it's hard, and I do think, I mean...
I think it needs to be judged... Firstly, it needs to be given more than 1 season, because we have given every Trek more than 1 season, and most first seasons of series are awful. And if you were to go back and, like, now and be like, would you renew TNG season 1 after that? No, you would not.
Maybe Voyager and Deep Space Nine, I think, were like the 2 that had like the most. But even those, it's still just like, it's very hit or miss.
It's hit or miss because it is so episodic, and so you have some truly atrocious episodes in all of them where you're just like, I guess, okay, so here's a question for you. Do you feel that tonally this series feels like a Trek series?
Yes. And that was actually one of the first things I said after I watched the first couple episodes, and I actually texted my aunt, who's a huge Star Trek fan, and I was just like, it feels like Star Trek to me. Like, watching it, the characters, the sort of in-between, I don't know, sort of like the giant aspects of it, it isn't, the way that I've also described it to my friends is it's basically the love child of Enterprise and Deep Space Nine. It has a lot of tonal comparisons to Deep Space Nine, especially the war stuff and the sort of moral ambiguity aspects of it, which comes up a lot in actually both Enterprise and DS9. They're definitely the most ones that really, grapple. Just knock that over. Ones that really grapple with the sort of deeper questions of morality in terms of on a practical level and in wartime. So there was a lot of, I thought, logical thing to that. And the prequelness and the sort of weird half retconning, half rolling with it. So I actually did think that it was a very logical successor to both of those series. Again, there's just so much there's so much Star Trek that it's like, is it similar to TNG? No. But if they take it all as a whole, and I mean, Deep Space Nine, for the record, is my favorite. Um, so, if you take it as a whole, I do think that there was a lot of tonality that seemed really appropriate. And they brought back Harry Mudd, which was like cute and fun, And I will say, like, the best episode, hands down, of the 15 is the time loop episode.
Yes,
everyone loves a good time loop episode. I love them so much. So it's like, that is like, yes, this is Star Trek. At the end, this ship keeps blowing up like every 20 minutes and you have to stop it. Like, yes, this is a thing. I've been here before. This is what I'm here for. This is what I'm here for.
I think you brought up a great point with the evolution, because I think if you look at all the Treks, any of them, they are all very much of their time. And if you watch them, you can be like, okay, this makes sense. This is the 90s. This is the 60s. This is the late 2000s. Like, it makes sense. And this
is the Bush era. Enterprise is super Bush. It's like you can just see the Bush administration's like sort of influence on what they wanted.
And so for this one, when I watched, I'm like, this definitely makes sense for our time period. This matches with the tone of what is happening in the world entirely. I completely understand it. And some of the complaints against it, I do not feel were fair. Like some of the people who are complaining about, oh, it's diverse, and they're just shoving it in there to like appease. And I'm just like, okay.
Have you watched Star Trek? I feel like who's just like, there's too much diversity. I'm like, again, have you ever watched Star Trek?
They've always done that. Star Trek has always done that. It's always tried to be on the forefront of pushing for diversity and showing that a diverse group of people will be able to work together, and you're going to have all kinds of people in positions of authority. And that's all, like, see, when you watch Voyager, like, Chakotay's not there just because they're like, yeah, we love Chakotay. It's like, no, they were trying to do something for representation with Chakotay. It doesn't always work, but they're making an effort.
They tried, which is more than a lot of other series can say.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, is like, they've always tried, and it's funny, like, because I was, like I said, rewatching the pilots, like, they really are very calm and sort of whatever about the transgender issue that is Dax.
Mm-hmm.
They're very like, oh yeah, I used to be a dude, now I'm a woman, I might be a dude later because I switched bodies, and it's like, everyone's like really like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And that was what, 93?
It was. Yeah.
And so there's
a really good episode where she encounters her wife from before, and she's dealing with all like, oh, I still love her, but like the rules say I can't be with her. And I'm like, you know what? That's actually a really good episode. People say like, oh, it's just lesbian fan service. And I'm like, no, it's so much more than that. Like, it's working through a lot of really interesting issues. And I think it's an episode that has merit. And that's the fun thing about Trek, is that you have all these episodes that have merit amongst, of course, the ones that are terrible. Right. I guess, so how do you feel about the serialization aspect of Discovery? Because I know a lot of people have a problem with how heavily serialized they feel it is.
So that's the main criticism that I actually really agree with. I think that Discovery's been really sort of hurt by the changes in how we do television now.
Yes.
So we used to have 26 episode seasons. That was how long all of these seasons went. This was 15 episodes. So that's like barely a season. That's like half-ish, little over half a season. So it's not even a full season. Second, it used to be like the episodic nature, I think, is part of it, because I think that we've really gotten so obsessed with plot as a television watching culture that we really don't appreciate what's the importance of quote unquote filler episodes. So I see this a lot, especially in the Steven Universe fandom, which has so much hate for the so-called filler episodes, which are, the Beach City ones. But the thing is, like, you need to spend time with your characters. You need to just kind of let it sit and like get to know them. Because if you don't spend that time really sort of sitting with them, then you're not going to be emotionally invested in their journey. If you have 8 episodes of pure plot, I don't even remember what all the kids' names in Stranger Things is. Like, I can't remember. They always say, like, there's one kid that I always get the name wrong because I don't even know it, and like, I don't know, they're both like little kids doing 80s things. But you don't really care about them so much as people because you don't have time to, and I think that that's true. I think that Star Trek, especially as it's supposed to be an ensemble cast, and that was a bit of a disservice, I think, as well, was just, they tried to fit, I mean, it's fine if you did a serialized thing, but if they had given it a 22 episodes and made it on network, they would have had more filler episodes that would have really given you time to care.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to care about people when you don't spend enough time with them.
That's the thing, and it's like you can build these really intricate, plot-based devices, be they about the war or whatever, but
puzzle box.
You also lose that ability to expand upon the world, because the thing with the filler episode too is that's a great time to impart a whole bunch of side information where you learn a lot about the Trek universe in those filler episodes. The little things, like stupid stuff like, oh, how's the replicator work, or like, when did the Cardassian war happen, or like all of these other things. Or like, oh, this character used to have a holo addiction, which is one of my favorite episodes of all time.
Oh man, that's a good one. I like the one where he's afraid of transporters. Barclay, exactly. You don't have that kind of focus. I don't even know who any of the side characters are. Like, especially like DS9 and Next Gen, I think more than any of the other ones, had all these like random side characters
who you would see again and again, and you felt really connected to them, and you were like, you actually were really excited when you saw them again. Even people who were antagonists on DS9's case, you're like, oh yay, it's Ducat,
Yes, exactly. And or Kai Wynn, like who's just like, they constantly pop up, whereas like I have no idea what any of the people on the actual like deck of the Discovery are called. There's that like girl with like red hair that's like kind of, I have no idea what her name is.
I think
she's there.
That's Tilly, I think.
No, not Tilly.
Not
the
Tilly.
Other
the other one.
It's like one of the
right.
There's like just they're just random deck people, and I'm like, you should have names and like vague backstories so I know who you are, because that's what makes it a richer universe.
Even some of the extras in TNG, I remember, like, you would see they were the bridge crew, and they named them, and you would always see them, and if they had like to go to one of Dana's poetry readings or something, they would be in the audience, and you're like, oh yeah, it's that person from the bridge. And I think that was one of the big disconnects for me, was because they were talking about how it's going to be like this wonderful, rich experience, and we're going to focus on Michael, and it's going to be completely different. I'm like, okay, that's great, and I like her, and I think she's a really interesting character, but one of the things I like about Trek is that you get to see all of the other characters too, and the interplay between that, and I feel that a lot of that has been lost. And in relation to the filler episodes, I think that what is irking a lot of people is that Trek has become very much a generational fandom, in that it's something that is passed down, that many people enjoy with their family, with their friends, with all kinds of people. And
growing up watching with my dad.
Yeah, same with me. And so one of the things that was possible was that he would share his favorite episodes. It would be like, oh, we're going to watch the episode with the Gorn, or we're going to watch the episode.
My mom's is Darmok. My mom loves
I love that episode.
Such a good episode. But it's like sometimes we'll be making dinner, I'll be visiting her, and it's like, oh, let's like watch Star Trek while making dinner. It's what episode? Let's watch Darmok. It's like, yay!
I know. I make like this terrible joke when my daughter comes up with her arms out. I'm like, Darmok, his arms wide, and
that's amazing.
And my husband just thinks I'm crazy, but he's like, that episode's not that good. And I'm like, you're missing out. I'm like, you like the Fairhaven Spirit Folk episodes from Voyagers. You can
what? No, wrong. That is incorrect.
We were watching Spirit Folk the other night, and he was just dying, and I was like, why? He's like, what? It's funny. But that's the thing. You can go, and that's, even DS9 loses that at the very end when it becomes heavily serialized. Like, it's not like I'm going to go to season 7 and watch, like, well, actually I might. It depends, because there were a couple of still.
But you've already sat with those characters for so long that, like, it all makes sense. And, like, especially, the last 9 episodes were, like, set up to be, like, one giant 9-episode story. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, it's like, you aren't being introduced to Ducat.
Yeah, it's not the first time you've seen him. You already know.
He's been in there since the pilot. Like, you've seen him go up and down and up and down and all this stuff. So it's like, all of these characters are people, I mean, even gosh, why am I blanking on Damar? Even Damar and like his arc makes sense, because literally he's been there from like season 3, and he was just kind of in the background. But like you've already sat with these characters. So like when Damar leads in Rebellion, it's not like, who is this guy? Why should I care about him? It's like, oh right, it's that guy, and we already have all of this multi-year information about it. So it's easier to go to serialization because you've already built up the characters enough that you care. It's harder to do serialization in the beginning. I mean, even Enterprise only did their one like giant serialized season in season 3.
Yeah.
And I actually think that that's what Discovery should have done. Sort of a one overarching plot, but with enough little sort of side things in between that you're able to kind of grow with it.
And that's what I meant by the feeling that they don't fully understand their fan base. Because I know the concern. I understand the business concern of it is that we are in the time of serialization and binge watching, and nobody wants to lose their audience by doing something that is not in vogue anymore, or not really the way that people who binge watch or have streaming services.
Yeah, but everyone's in love with This Is Us. Like, people are fine. People still watch NCIS, and that's been on for like my entire existence, I think. So,
like, I feel like it wouldn't have been as big a risk as they seem to think it would have been to have that marriage of the serialized format with the more episodic format, because I think that is where Trek is at its strongest, when it marries those two together, because it's not great when it's just like, oh, random episode after random episode. Like, that's one of the weaknesses of the 60s series, but that's of its time. It's just like, sometimes you see a character and you're like, I would love to see this character again, and I know that we will never see them again, but that's partially, again, of, you know, its time. And I think I feel like we really could have married it better than we have, and I hope maybe going forward they will. But at the same time, I don't feel like they're going to.
Well, the other thing is, it's Star Trek isn't prestige TV.
No.
Like, the whole the whole, like, short, serialized, like, really tight story thing is for prestige TV, and Star Trek is not and has never been prestige TV. It's fun. It's not... I mean, there are episodes that are pure brilliance. You know, there are episodes that are like amazing, and I will just watch over and over, and bits of it where I'm like, yes, I know all the words because this is like one of the most powerful episodes ever. But at the same time, like, that's one out of every like 15, 20 maybe episodes. There's like one or two a season that's like, you know, that would be like that kind of level, and everything else is just kind of enjoying yourself. I mean, it was a space western. It was more like, you know, so it's kind of, it was never intended to be that kind of thing. I don't think anyone in the 60s or even, you know, the 90s would have conceived of prestige TV as we have it now. And I think that does it a huge disservice, because it's not supposed to be that. It never has been.
I think where it falls into where people can take it as such is because it always has had not necessarily a high estimation of itself, but it's always preached high-level-minded values. It's always come at it from this idea that, you know, we can be better. We're going to be better, and this is going to be this wonderful future where we're going to have to overcome all of these things, and, you know, Picard's speech and Janeway's speech, which is not as good as a Picard speech, and all of these
Well, that's true of, like, all of her speeches now that I think about
it. And so I feel like they wanted to bring that level to it, to be like, oh, Star Trek has all of these like really lofty ideals, and maybe it's worthy of being, you know, prestige television. But I'm like, for me, actually, that's not coming across for me in this series as much. Like, in all the other series, even Enterprise, I really got that they were trying to be better people. Even DS9, where they're nuanced, at least for the Federation side, I was getting the sense that, you know, like, we are really trying to live up to something. And, like, when they have to betray their values, it hurts them. Like, it really does. Yeah. Like, Sisko or Bashir, as the series goes on, like, it really hurts them. And because you've built up what the Federation stands for, you really see that it's like a betrayal of what these values should be. But I'm not feeling that as much from these characters. And I know they're trying to do like a Section 31 thing, which I'm fine with. I really enjoy the idea of Section 31. I wish they weren't being as ham-fisted. Like, they have black badges, so Section 31.
Well, they had the black glove thing going on in DS9.
They did. But, like, they also were sparing. That's the thing I liked about Section 31, is that it was sparing. But even then, when they introduced it, I always had a bit of a problem with how they treated it like they shouldn't have it. They were like, Federation does. I was like, every other organization has one. Of course you have one. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's the kind of the tension. And I think I saw what they were trying to do, which again is the tension between, you know, ideals and the idea that we can be better, and the reality that the world is a dark, terrible place, and there's not always room for those ideals, or those ideals don't always seem to be the right thing to do. And I mean, the pilot is just Michael going crashing and burning, basically. And then, you know, the whole thing is like, oh, and then she redeems herself at the end, kind of. I saw what they were going for, but it was...
It made it hard to get on board with her for me at the start, because I was like,
I didn't.
What?
The real hero of Discovery is Saru. Saru is the hero of this. He's absolutely the hero of the story. Saru, closely followed by Ash Tyler. Those two are the real heroes of the story. kind of Tilly, kind of, Stamets, but like Michael is like actually like the least interesting of them. Which is really unfortunate. I actually don't like her that much. I'm just like, you're kind of blah. You're kind of like watching like Neo or something like that. One of those sort of like, you can just kind of impose whatever you think on like the blank canvas character.
It's difficult with Vulcans because they need people to bounce off, or people who have Vulcan ideals, because you have to play it really straight-faced, really wooden for the most part. And so if you don't have that counterbalance and you're just with this person who's not emoting a lot, it can be very hard to attach and be like, okay, I really care, because you don't have anything to really go on so much. Like, oh, that pilot.
Yeah, it's just, but I mean, she was like much more like positive in the beginning, and it's just, but like, yeah, Saru's the hero of the story. He holds the crew together. Like, he like learns all this stuff. He like becomes a good leader. He's the one who like actually makes everything happen.
Yeah.
I'm just like, you're actually the hero of the story. The hero of the story is Saru, who is the best.
Yeah.
He was underappreciated.
What I find fascinating too is that for the people who are watching it, there's a lot of theory stuff going on. I've noticed that. Like, there's a lot of like, oh my god, what's happening? Is it the mirror universe? Is this Section 31 Vox?
I gotta say, I have very mixed feelings about the whole puzzle box aspect of like theories in fandom.
How so?
Because, well, on some level, it's really fun. I love theorizing. Theorizing is great. On the other hand, we've gotten too good at it.
Yes.
And when I read the whole Vok theory, I was literally like, crap. Like, no, this is really plausible and it's probably right. And I don't, A, want to know that, and B, I kind of don't want this to happen. So I was like really bummed out. I was like, okay, it's like, great, okay, this is what's going to happen here. I don't know how spoilery you want to get with all of this, but I was so sad. I was like, no, I'm not. And then with the Lorca and the Mirror universe, I was like, that's fine, sure, whatever. Like, but at the same time, I was just kind of like, okay, are you like destroying your own enjoyment out of like turning it into a puzzle box? Because people did that with Westworld too.
Westworld was an interesting one, because that was I love Westworld, and as soon as I heard the William theory, and then I am an editor, so as soon as they were like, look at the editing, I was like, oh god. I was like, that they're right. There's no way they're wrong based on how this is edited. It's like they were clever about it because the editing is very clever, but it's there and it is leaving you little clues. And so it's interesting because it didn't take away the enjoyment for me, but I was like, this is a huge reveal, and the fact that they didn't do it until the last episode meant that if you knew it, the entire series had lost a bunch of its suspense. And actually, there were a couple of other theories that I was on board with that also turned out to be true. So I was like, but it was a really creative show. So I was like, this show is really creative. So why did we guess everything like right away? We solved the entire series from like,
well, I think part of it's like the sort of, whatever it is, the mass. It's like, the everyone on the internet working together to solve a problem is going to solve it a lot faster than an individual. It's just how that works. So I think part of it's that, but it is, I mean, like I said, when I read it, I was like, I understood why they did that.
Yeah.
I thought they did it fantastically. I actually think Shazad Latif deserves an Emmy for his performance.
It was really good.
It was phenomenal, especially him doing the being a victim of sexual assault. There's this one like look that he has that I've seen in other people and I've used, which is this sort of like very brittle calmness where you're like, if I say this in a more emotional way, I'm going to break. And you can see it. And I'm like, oh my God, I know this expression. I know this. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're doing such a good job. No one appreciates him because everyone's just too distracted by the theory. And I'm like, you are missing the entire point of this guy. You are like missing the beauty of like his performance and like the fact that he ends up playing effectively 3 different characters. And you're just like, dude, give the guy some credit as opposed to being like, well, here's the giant puzzle box. I'm like, come on.
No, I get what you mean. It's like you can get caught up in the theory over the show itself, which is something that didn't used to happen when we didn't all collectively view in the same way we did. Because not only did we binge watch and view all at once, we also go online and like we're tweeting and like watching with other people and all kinds of stuff. So it's a very different experience than like sometimes you would get a watching party together for sure. But a lot of times it would just be you by yourself on your couch watching this thing, and then you'd have to wait until the next week to watch. And I actually didn't mind that because for me it was simulcast. So it would come out every week, would be a new episode. And I actually don't mind that. I don't mind the waiting at all. I kind of missed it, actually. It was a weird form of nostalgia. I was like, oh, I have to wait. Because with binging, sometimes that thing happens where you run out and you hit that point where you've caught up with everybody else, and then you just have to wait even longer, and it's kind of sad and depressing.
Something good about waiting and that sort of having the weekly thing. I always loved that. I remember watching Voyager every night because they played it twice a week, Wednesdays or something, and then they would redo it on Sunday nights. And I wasn't allowed to watch TV on weeknights, so I was watching on Sunday. Oh yeah, you know, was around and watch Voyager. It was a good system. I liked it. So it's kind of, I mean, yeah, I'm with you on the sort of not dumping it all at one time. That there is something to be said for that.
It alters how you view it and how you think about it as well, and it alters how you write it and structure it if you know that people are going to be watching it all at once versus that they're going to have to wait. Because when you binge watch series that were written for weekly consumption, it is very different. And sometimes you'll, like, Supernatural is notorious for this. You'll watch one episode where it's like, we're never going to talk again, it's over, and the next episode is they meet up for lunch at a diner. They're like, I guess we've resolved all our issues. They're like, this must have not been as awkward when there was a week in between it. It's really awkward when you're watching it 2 minutes later.
Yeah. Well, I do think that weirdly the sort of puzzle box nature of, for lack of a better term, of the show, it does give people too much time to find it out. So if you're going to be, I mean, Supernatural isn't serialized in the same way. If I remember correctly, I stopped after season 5.
It has that good mix, I think, where there's an overall arc that we need to solve by series end, but we have plenty of time to do random meta episodes and stuff in the middle, and we'll get to the arc when we get to it, because we still have 22 episodes. Yeah. So
exactly. So I mean, but if you're doing an intricate puzzle box of like to the point where you're making up fake IMDb pages to like fool the fans. It's like, and then you do it on a week by week basis, they have so much time to figure it out, and they're going to. So you're kind of like, those two impulses are really just designed to clash against each other in a lot of ways. So I mean, I think but I mean, it is what it is. I don't think necessarily everyone thought that they were going to figure that particular twist out. I was actually surprised that they did the mirror universe thing. I was not quite expecting that.
I'm not always thrilled to see the mirror universe, to be honest.
Really? You might be the only Star Trek fan I've ever met say that.
I enjoy it. Like, I love goateed Spock. I like sexy Intendant Kira and all of that stuff. But I do feel that it's a bit gimmicky and it gets a bit obvious for me sometimes. Sometimes they try and build that world up, especially in the tie-in novels. They really try and give it more weight and depth. But a lot of times it just feels very gimmicky to me and a very easy way to be like, look, see, we know Trek, mirror universe. So I don't know, maybe I'm a cynic. Maybe I'm just a cynic like that. And
I will say, rewatching some of it, seeing Lorca, you can see all of the things, they breadcrumbed it really well. You know, down to like having a Gorn, and there's a sort of like, why does he have a Gorn? Why does he have this like weird like murder like room of like scary shit? I'm like, oh right, because he's evil. That makes so much more sense. But to be fair, perfect casting. My only issue with Lorca is the first 3 episodes I watched him, I couldn't unsee Lucius Malfoy.
Yeah.
I was just like, Lucius, where is your hair?
That's me every time I see Jason Isaacs. Also, I'm programmed to believe that he will be evil because it's where he lives.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's really true. He does it well, though. He does a very, I will say, like, he did a perfect Lucius Malfoy. So that really kind of hit a weird note for me. I feel like people who watched Quantum Leap probably felt that way when they saw Enterprise, being like, wait, this guy? It's like somebody who you're like so used to seeing in one way, and then they're doing something else and you just have to like adjust.
I know, it's kind of like, okay, so when does he hop to the next body?
Oh, gosh. When was that show out. I watched, that was like on some like random network TV, like on reruns that I randomly started
was like the 80s. So.
Oh my God. Speaking of other crazy sci-fi shows from the past. So what did you think, since this is shipping, I'm actually curious, what did you think of the killing of Culber?
Like, I'm still processing so much of everything because I'm planning on doing not only a big discussion of Discovery video, but a discussion on like ships and everything that's happening in it. So I really think that for me personally, I need to give it another rewatch of everything now that it's all complete, to see how I feel about it. Because that's always my thing with Trek, is I'm like, and that was part, like I was telling you before we started recording, I was going through and rewatching a bunch of Trek episodes, just random ones, against Discovery episodes to see how I felt tonally about whether it was Trekkie or not. Because initially when I first started watching Discovery, actually, I didn't feel it was Trekkie. And I was just like, this doesn't feel like a Trek show to me. It feels like space adventures. If this was some random sci-fi show, I would like it better than if it was a Trek show. But then when I watched it against the others, I was like, okay, you know what? No, this actually is Trekkie. What's throwing me off is that there, like you said, there has been that gap. And so this Trek is very much for our time. And our time is a bit more cynical than I can stand.
Oh, I know, right? In the 90s, we were so optimistic in the 90s. We were really, like, excited, and the Cold War had ended, and everything was going to be great. And now we're just like,
I know,
nope.
and it was all going to be good, and now we're just like, it's going to be awful. So is all of this what prompted you to write the piece that you wrote?
Yeah, so it was just, I mean, it's, so part of it I feel kind of, I don't know if this happens to you, but there's a certain amount of just like, when people are attacking something so much that I like, I mean, I don't have to love it. I just have this like knee-jerk reaction to be like, look, guys, why are you piling on this? You're being negative Nellies. So I need to like, so I have this like knee-jerk reaction to like just defend it. So I really wanted to, because I think that, like you said, there's so much negative talk around the show, both by people who haven't watched it, and I read the AV Club reviews, and oh my goodness, are they negative? I was like, you are so dour. Like, do you not like puppies either? Like, is that the kind of person you are? Like, come on. You know, just, there's a certain amount of that. So I really wanted to write something that was kind of like, look, it's not as bad as you think. Also, Star Trek was never as great as you want to believe. Because it's true. Like, both of those are true. There's some great Trek, and there's some horrendous Trek.
There's some horrendous Trek. I think part of what, like, leads into that, though, is that so many Trek fans are coming from that place of being maligned already. Or being mocked, you know, for liking Star Trek and feeling that it does have more to it. I feel
like it's so normalized now that, like, Star Trek and specifically, like, there's certainly other things that were less so, but I feel like Star Trek is such a part of the zeitgeist. It's like making fun of somebody liking Harry Potter. I can't really imagine that happening.
I still find it. Like, I do. I worked on a nerd channel for a while. And we talked about all kinds of nerddom, and they wouldn't let us touch Trek. It was really fascinating. It was just shocking. Like, it was like, no, that's too niche. That's too nerdy. Like, we're not gonna go there. And I was like, really? It was really fascinating, because I had felt the same way, where I was just like, well, Trek fandom is everywhere and all the Trek all the time. Yeah. And so it was really fascinating to see, like, no, there are still holdouts for whom it's still kind of like, oh, kitschy sci-fi show. And so I was like, huh. But then again, I felt like part of that was the gap in that type of specific sci-fi genre show. Because there was that period, again, like I said, where it was just everywhere all the time, and you could Stargate, you could Farscape, you could Star Trek, you could do all of the things.
You could Babylon 5, underrated.
Yes.
Criminally underrated.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it really is. And it is different enough from Deep Space Nine, because I know that whole thing about their origin, but they really do branch off and become very different shows from each other.
But they're incredibly different shows.
Yeah.
They're very different. Yeah. I would not have thought that had like that kind of, but that's, again, because I watched them. I also watched Babylon 5 so much later. Mm-hmm. I think I didn't watch it until like a decade after. I didn't watch it until it came out on DVD.
No,
so whenever
same here.
That was.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't watch it while it was airing. Actually, same for Voyager. I came to Voyager pretty late. I saw Voyager after. So
Yeah, I watched, I want to say starting season 3 DS9 all the way through the end of Enterprise. I watched live, just watched as it happened, basically. I think there was like some bits where like there are gaps, but I don't know if it's gaps because I was like 8 and I don't really remember, or if there were gaps because there were chunks of time where I wasn't watching it. But pretty much, yeah.
How do you feel about the shipping in Star Trek Discovery?
Again, I loved Ash. I really thought that they did a really good job with that relationship. It needed more time. They needed more time to really build that up. They really needed more time. It's like they're like together for like 3 episodes and then it's like, and then the reveal happens. I'm like, dude, if you really, I mean, I get that, you know, you had this all plotted out beforehand and you're trying to do a short season, but like you gotta give us more reasons for them to like each other and like give that needed to be more of a slow burn. Really, just the speed of it kind of bothered me. Mm-hmm. And then I really would have loved a lot more time with Stamets and Culber because they were adorable and I loved them so much. And I was like, and I mean, there is the trope of just like killing off the gay character. And I felt as like, you know, there's all this huge deal about, oh my gosh, yeah, we're having our first openly gay couple and then we're going to kill one of them. And I'm like, guys.
For the drama, but
I mean, I get wanting to kill someone who's like known and not just wanting to kill a random red shirt, but like at the same time, like you had to kill him. He was so sweet.
Like
he was so sweet.
Like speaking on it, I feel like that was part of what I had a problem with of that serialized aspect, because I feel not only when it comes to heavy serialization do you have that like intense need to plot, not have filler, and so you don't have time for everything, but they also feel the need to raise the stakes. And so I felt like when I watched that, it very much felt like when I was reading the last Harry Potter book, and it was like, people die because war is serious, and when things are serious, people need to die. And so I was just like, I know it's kind of cliche that the main characters have like a character shield and they're completely fine and nothing can hurt them. But I'm like, at the same time, I don't necessarily hate that. I don't mind having that kind of stability, that there are certain characters who are going to be okay, or that you can build it up longer so you have the illusion that they're going to be okay. And so it means even more than, let's say, when 2-3 seasons down the line somebody actually does die and you're like, oh my god, like I really thought they were going to be okay because they tricked me by putting them in all of these perilous situations. The thing with the kill your gays trope that is so awkward is that it does have that level of validity, because that happens so often that you just see queer characters come on and they die because it's tragic, because then it kind of ties back to that awkward idea of that queer romances are inherently tragic, which is really problematic in of itself. But then it also ties into the fact that even though this is supposed to be an ensemble cast, it still very much focuses itself in a kind of hierarchical fashion of like, this person is the protagonist and these people are their sub people. And so then you run into side character syndrome, where side characters are never safe. And since oftentimes side characters are queer characters or characters of color, they get killed off. And so then you're saying in the situation where like, were they killed because, or just because they were side characters and we were trying to ramp up drama? But then at the same time, it is sad because, like you said, they put all of that emphasis into it. And I remember people were so excited, and I was seeing all the gifs and like all the art, and people were messaging me. They were like, it's happening and it's so good. And I'm like, I'm so sad right now that this happened.
Well, yeah, and it's just, well, it's also, I mean, I've thought through, so I'm trying to, I wrote a novel and I'm trying to sell it, so I do think a lot about like actual story construction and, you know, when to kill what character and if you should kill them and that kind of building of drama.
Yes.
And I did go through, and because they didn't have as large of a cast, I don't know who else they could have killed other than Tilly. Yeah. You could have killed Tilly or you could have killed Culber, and that's about it. And why would you kill Tilly? Tilly is adorable.
I can't with Tilly. She's the one who does the most colloquialisms. I can't.
Really? I just want to give her a hug. She's so awkward.
There's part of her that's like the cute, awkward fangirl, but then there's part of me that hates all awkward characters. So I'm just like, I could have had my romance and she could have died. That's so awful.
Right, fair enough. So maybe it would have been better if they had just killed off Tilly. That would have been really interesting, actually, now that I think about it. But basically, because you can't kill Stamets, you can't kill Lorca, you can't kill Saru, you can't kill Michael.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, okay, Giorgio is already dead, which again, that was wrong. You should never have done that, because that was just so... The pilot, it makes you care about exactly 2 characters, and then you kill one of them. The other one just crashes and burns. I'm like, what are you doing?
I know, I was so invested. I was like, okay, this is interesting. And I was like, did you like her? Well, too bad.
I mean, I get why...
you can have mirror her, so...
They really, I stand by this. So with my pilot rewatch and my piece on it, I figured that what they really should have done is they should have started it in episode 3. And then told the first 2 in a flashback form. Over the course of like 5 or 6 episodes. Just having like literally having the series start with like Michael on the prison ship. Being like,
that would have been really compelling, actually. Yeah, that would have started you off right with a mystery of like, how did this character get here? And yeah, that would have been a really good place to start. It would have been unique too, from a track perspective. Yeah.
You could have done that, and then you start with her going on to the Discovery, and then you're like, why did she mutiny? What's going on? And then it could all be kind of revealed over time, and then that would make a lot more sense. And then, because it's weird that you have a show called Discovery, and it doesn't actually show you Discovery until episode 3. That's weird. That's like not correct.
When we were first watching it, my husband was like, I thought the ship was the Discovery. Is the Discovery the journey? And I was like,
love it.
Is it metaphorical? It's a metaphorical discovery.
Yeah, I'm down with that. I can see that particular thing. Yeah, no, so it's just they did it wrong, and they should have just started it there, and then it would have flowed better. But yeah, no, sure, that's fine. They can now you've convinced me they can kill Kelly. Although we would have missed the whole Captain Killy bit, and that was lovely.
I'm actually on, I have all my tabs open. I have a couple of like shipping page tabs open. I'm looking at my Discovery stuff right now, and it's like they have so few works. And again, I think that comes back to not necessarily the show itself, but the fact that so few people saw it. And part of it is serialization. I know that with really heavily serialized shows, that does tend to happen sometimes.
I feel like the only, so one of the interesting things with Star Trek is because everyone is so canon focused, I feel like, at least me personally, I tend to be more canon relationship focused as well. The exception for that is Voyager, because they did it all wrong.
Yeah, everything is wrong with the ships on Voyager.
My first ship is from Voyager. The first ship I ever remember sailing is Harry and Seven of Nine. And I stand by that. I stand by it. That was literally the first time I was ever like, no, but these 2 characters need to get together. Like, this is what... But, I mean, again, there aren't that many characters. I feel like the only, like, non-canonical one that I've seen is, like, really dark Lorca-Michael shipping.
Yes.
Which is... But that's hinted at. It's like kind of, it's semi-canonical. It's unclear if like in the end he was like getting onto her and was like, hey. Because it seemed like he was sleeping with Mira Michael, so it was a little unclear.
Yeah.
So are you trying to replace your lover? Are you just trying to use her? I'm a little unclear in your motives. Then again, it's Jason Isaacs. He could probably make anything kind of like darkly sexy if he wanted to.
Exactly, because that's just his natural state. My husband and I have this great headcanon where secretly he really wants to play good characters, but they keep casting him as villain. We're like, wouldn't that be great if he's just living his life trying to have one role where he's like a solid, upstanding citizen, and they just won't let it happen?
I don't know, maybe he likes playing the weird characters. I have no idea. Maybe it makes him happy.
If I acted, I definitely would love to play like the weird twist characters all the time. I think it comes down to, like you said, though, because there are so few characters and because the show isn't necessarily as... It's hard to say, because it's not that it's not character focused, because that's not really fair, but it's just that you don't, I find, learn as many little silly tidbits about the characters as you do in other series. Like, I didn't need to know that Harry played the clarinet and the saxophone, and I didn't need to see Riker playing the trombone at the concerts and stuff like that, but those little things.
Oh, but the dart scenes, the darts were great.
Yes.
Dude, those 2 guys playing darts. I gotta say, I actually didn't know about the Garrick Bashir thing.
Oh, really?
At all. Well, because I watched all of this when I was little. I mean, I didn't even know, let's be honest here, my introduction to what being a lesbian was from Buffy. So like, I mean, I wasn't going to pick up on that when I was 7, especially 7 in the early, like in like the early mid 90s when like everything was still super closeted. So like, yeah, I never picked up on that. And when you like referenced it in one of your videos, I was like, oh my God, I totally see that. I was blind, and now I see.
I was so convinced when I first started watching, and I was like, this is happening. Like, this is a thing, right? And then it wasn't a thing. Trek has a couple of pairings for me that are like that, where I'm like, this is a thing, and then it just never happens. Like, Chakotay.
Janeway Chakotay?
Yeah, Janeway Chakotay.
Yeah.
He wanted that to happen so badly, because I was reading a bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff, because I'm thinking of doing a Seven and Janeway video. And he wanted that so badly, and she didn't, because of the type of feminism she was trying to embody in her portrayal, and she felt that that relationship would derail it. But then the fan base felt that it would actually be a really great sign of showing a woman in authority who also has a romance and is balancing all the things. And so
starts in the pilot engaged. She is like a fiance in the first one and a pet dog. And
he vanished in like season. Mark doesn't matter.
Or Mark.
I know.
Did you ever read that Janeway novel of like her backstory? Yeah, Mark was like her like friend from childhood. It was actually really interesting. She goes on a date with Riker when they're in the academy together. I read this, gosh, I had to have been like elementary, maybe middle school when I read that, but no, probably middle school, but yeah. No. So that's for Mark. But I mean, I'm just saying that they do address that. There are several episodes where they address her sort of like desire for a relationship, like that holodeck episode where she's Jane Eyre.
Or also the Fairhaven episodes where she is me in the character design setting. It's just like, delete the wife, take off its facial hair, no, put it back on.
I mean, they totally could have just had her get it on with Chakotay, and he was so in love with her, and they should have just done it. But I'm trying to think if there are any other ones. Like, really, most of my shipping seems to come from Voyager, and then, of course, the horrifying canon disaster that is Chip and T'Pol. No, thank you.
I kind of like it conceptually, but the way it's executed is so terrible. Because I was thinking about I was rewatching, I was like, you know what? I don't hate this, and I actually don't hate the episode where they have the child that doesn't make it and stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I don't hate this. But the way the rest of their relationship and just Paul's character is handled in general is so atrocious that it's so... Ugh.
Well, part of the thing that really bothered me is they spend so much time building up her relationship with Archer. Like, they spend seasons building that up, and they even have a season 3 episode where she's like his nurse and she's like staying with him for like this and it's like clear that there's a romantic undertone there, and I'm just like, you cannot build up one canon romance and then switch to a different one willy-nilly.
I'm kind of glad they did, though, because he was so awful to her. I was like, nope, never forgive, never forget.
God, he's such an asshole. At least Malcolm was a sweetheart.
He's a really bad captain. He's a really bad
Oh my God,
captain. That's the thing, is like, because people like to pull the Enterprise versus Discovery comparisons a lot, and they're like, which would you rather watch? Go, gun to your head. And I'm like, don't do that to me. They're two very different animals, and the things really I like and dislike about each of them are very different. They're very different, because Star Trek Enterprise has so many problems, but it's trying so hard, but it's got so many problems.
It just, I give it a lot of credit, because I actually really liked the retconning when they did the thing with the foreheads. I thought that was well done. I liked I really love Vulcans. I feel like everyone's always like, Klingons. And I'm like, no, but the Vulcans are better. They're so much better. So like, I really loved when they were delving into Vulcan stuff, because I was like, thank you. Thank you for finally giving me my Vulcan stuff beyond just Ponfar.
Oh, Ponfar. No, I'm just thinking about, because I'm going to do a comparison between TOS's first Ponfar episode and then Enterprise's last Ponfar episode, and just Bounty. Why? It's like somebody's fanfic came to life. Because, like, I don't have a problem with it. Like, SF Debris has a video about where he mentions that it is very fanficky. I'm like, it's true, though. Like, it's very clear, like, oh, no, she needs to mate. Who's she gonna sleep with? I'm just like, oh, come on, guys. Come on.
Oh.
That's the thing, too, because, like, I did make a tweet about how, like, sometimes Star Trek Discovery makes me cringe. But I'm like, the others have made me cringe as well. Discovery makes me cringe a bit more consistently. I'm not sure if that will continue as, like, more time passes and I have more time to absorb it and more seasons are added. And because, especially with something so heavily serialized, that does matter. Because later seasons can alter how you view earlier seasons. And that happens a lot more with heavily serialized material. So something could come along that makes the first season or even the pilot amazing. Like, I don't know. So it could happen.
Well, we'll see what they do with Georgiou. But I will say this, like, I think part of the other problem, one of the reasons that everyone is being a lot harder on Discovery than I think is necessary is the beauty of nostalgia glasses. Like, everyone's like, oh, but it was so much more fun back in the day. I'm like, yeah, but, like, if you replayed this now, you're going to, if you take off the nostalgia glasses, it's, you know, you're just kind of being an asshole right now to, like, Discovery. Like, some of it's fair, some of it's not. I feel like there's a certain amount of, like, because everyone just, like, views the previous ones as, like, oh, they're so wonderful. And I'm like, okay.
I don't know.
Yes
I don't know. Because having gone through a thing where I watched just a slew of episodes from all of them, I do feel that even in the bad episodes, I had more fun. And I don't think it was just nostalgia. I just felt like some of the tone was more fun.
I think you're right about that. You know, actually, I think you're right about that because Discovery is many things, and there are many bits that I like about it, but it's not fun. It's not, it's not joyful. It's not like, I mean, some of it's only fun when it's being quippy, which is not the same thing. That's a Joss Whedon fun, not an actual fun.
And that's what I mean about the underlying tone of exploration and trying to elevate ourselves and be better and joyful about our exploration. I don't feel that Discovery has that. Even Enterprise has that. And Enterprise has tons of things like, I'm bringing my dog to pee on a sacred tree. And, like, that's ridiculous. But
I actually thought Porthos was genius. I love Porthos. He's so cute. How can you not?
I like that he had a pet, but it's a terrible command decision to bring your pet on diplomatic missions. Don't do that. I think that's the thing, is that sometimes part of Trek that people remember is that fun of it. And some of it is definitely nostalgia because not everybody goes back and rewatches it all the time. They just have this rose-tinted idea of what it was and that all of the episodes were great, and, like, that's not true. But, like, sometimes it was a bit tedious to watch Discovery for me. It was like I had to be in a certain emotional place where I was like, okay, this might get heavy. Like, I don't know how heavy we're gonna get tonight, so, like, maybe I'll wait till tomorrow or something like that. Whereas even in the heaviest episodes of the other series, I found that I could still put myself through it and do it. Maybe that's because I know what's going to happen, obviously, because I've seen them before.
I think that the heaviness is again comparable to the war.
Yeah, like the DS9 gets really, like, there is some, like, where she's kidnapped and they turn her into a Cardassian and she thinks that was her whole life. Like, there are some very dark episodes in DS9 for sure.
But I mean, the entire last two seasons, I would say, are tonally fairly similar to Discovery. Again, part of the war thing.
They have those breaks, and because you've had the other seasons before
they have the one where they're playing baseball against the Vulcans. I could have done without that break.
I could have done, that's like one of my least favorite episodes of all time. It's so stupid. I can't with the baseball holodeck episode.
I know.
Take me out to the ball game. No, thank you.
Oh my gosh, no, just no. Like they don't even have points for effort on that one. I'm just like, no, just don't.
I get it because they're like, oh, we're gonna have some fun because it's been so dark, and I'm like, this is the wrong kind of fun. Like, I can stomach the heist holodeck episode where they gotta help him get his casino back, but even that.
Really, I actually do not like that one either. I gotta say, I am so glad that the one nice thing that I like about the prequels is no holodecks.
Because I love the holodeck, but the holodeck is an abused plot device.
Exactly. It would be fine if they did it if they did little by little, but, like, you know, and it was interesting in Voyager because you had the whole debate about sentience and about whether or not it's a life form and can you program.
And even also about ships' resources. Should you leave it running the entire time? Like, there are all kinds of questions.
So, but it's like, there's just too much of it, and they're just too, I'm like, no, I am glad that those are not there, but I really wish that there were more.
That's how I feel about the Mirror episodes. Like, that's
fair.
how I feel. I feel like, especially, like, when we get to late DS9, and, like, Garrickson's chains on the bridge next to Crater Wharf and stuff.
I have no idea what you're talking about. That's the beginning of a great BDSM fic.
And I'm just like, no, I'm not here for this. Like, but again, yeah, the holodeck does have some... Although I did love the idea that there were holo authors, like people who just published entire like novelizations that were holo. I'm like, that sounds really cool. And especially as we've upped our technological game, I'm like, that sounds like something that could come in the future that I'm entirely here for. 100%.
Well, it's like game. I mean, it's like people who write, like video games, except
exactly.
it's
only
VR video games.
Yeah, like if we get VR to that point, I'm 100% on board. Although I think I would be Barclay probably. I'd have holo addiction.
Everyone would be Barkley. That's why Ernest Klein wrote Ready Player One. Theory that everyone's just going to turn into Barkley. Basically, yes. It's the same thing.
Yeah. So it's like, I feel like a lot of things are coming together in Discovery, and a lot of the backlash I feel is that a lot of fans feel they're not being addressed in the things that they have a problem with, and that they're being belittled, because there are two things that are happening. There are people who are freaking out way too much and taking it way too seriously.
The number of comments I've read that were like just homophobic on like about the episodes, I was like, dudes, and
that's the thing, and that is
your opinions don't count.
And that is the Star Trek fan that you don't want to be associated with. And that's the thing. But the thing is that I feel that a lot of fans feel like if they have complaints that aren't in that vein, but aren't being addressed, they're being lumped in with that group of people to be dismissed. Like, they're being lumped in with the people who are being homophobic, who don't want more female characters, who don't want more diversity. And there are plenty of people who are just chilling in like Canon City who are like, I can't get over the fact that this, and this are different. And they're being treated the same way, because lots of people are like, well, that's ridiculous. Who cares if this little tiny bit of canon is different? Or I'm like, well, some people really do. And for some people, it's completely ruining. Like, it's completely show ruining because something is different. And I get that, because there are things that I'm nitpicky like that about. Like, I don't let it ruin it for me, but there are things where I'm like, I totally feel you. I understand why this is extremely irritating for you. So I feel like it's this interesting thing where there are really abusive, awful fans who have always been there, who come to the forefront and are very vocal. And then you're like, well, we just can't please those fans. And then you have the other fans who are like, I have concerns that I don't feel are being addressed and I'm not being listened to, and there's no really outlet for me, and then I can't even watch it. So
yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, they could have handled it all better, but at the same time, the whole creator fan dynamic is so fraught now. It's just such a fraught thing, and everything is just, no one really does it well.
It's hard. Yeah, no one does it well. It's like fans overreact, creators don't say the right thing at the right time, and it's just, it's really hard, because even I, like, when I read those interviews, and I was like, well, you're wrong. I didn't say anything about it, but I was like, you're just wrong, and you don't. Like, the only way I can see the captain as protagonist is if we were talking about tie-in magazines and materials and interviews, where, like, because when you're talking about Star Trek zines and magazines, like official ones, they always talk to the captain. That's who they talk to.
Yes,
like,
this is true.
So, like, that, if you were talking from that perspective, I get it. But if we're talking from a viewer perspective, then that's just 100% not true at all. I'm so hung up on this, and I
would say to an extent, the closest one that I would say is not isn't TOS, but actually Deep Space Nine, specifically because that is a very specific character arc that they do, and Sisko's actual character arc is so very tied into the plot arcs, with all of the
emissary
wormhole and the emissary and the prophets and the sort of going and joining them at the end, and I mean, it's all very. It's more about him than but it's not. I mean, it's not that he's the protagonist. It's that, like, he is much more of a vehicle for all of these plot things than, like, almost anyone else.
Yeah, like, he definitely ties into the theme of the story of what DS9 is about. But at the same time, all of the characters around him also undergo significant growth and are given the time.
Nog is probably the most, like, character arc-y person ever.
No, Nog's amazing, and especially when you start, because you don't think that it's going to go that way at all, or that he's even going to be a significant character. Even stupid characters like Morn. It's like, Morn.
episodes, the fact that there are more episodes,
it's pretty amazing.
But this is what I'm talking about with Discovery's cast is too small, is because like there are those characters, like, you know, you saw those people partying in the time loop episode, and they're just like, I don't know your people's names.
They're like, who are you?
Or just have any. Morn says nothing in 7 seasons, and he had actual multiple episodes about him.
I know, and he had a backstory, and you knew about his life, his likes and dislikes.
Like, you can do that if you really wanted to, but I mean, you also couldn't have the story be about Lorca. I mean, you couldn't, because of the way that they structured it with killing off Georgiou and then Lorca's Lorcaness. I mean, you really couldn't have it even have the same level of like attention paid to the captain that you do in any of the other series. I mean, it is sort of, I would say the captain is kind of like first among equals in the shows.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term.
Yeah,
you know, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not that they're the protagonists, and they're certainly not the only protagonists, but they are sort of the most focused on to an extent.
Almost like the anchor. Like, we have them to anchor the series down, and no matter what, we can always go back to the captain, kind of thing.
Yes.
More romance.
Which is why you need a really good captain, or a really terrifying captain. But you couldn't do that when the captains were just constantly being killed willy-nilly every, like, few episodes of Discovery. How many captains died?
It's not a safe position. It makes me laugh, because, like, Star Trek has this captain fetish, where it's like, oh, look, it's Captain LaForge, Captain Crusher, Captain Dax. I'm like, you don't want this position. You don't want it.
Don't do it. Also, I don't understand the whole, how does one become a captain? Because how do you become a captain from being an engineer? How do you become a captain from being a science officer? I'm just like, these are very different things.
That's what my husband was saying. He was like, at least Crusher was captain of a medical ship, but he was like, Geordi, he was like, is this an engineering ship?
How do you become a captain? Like, don't you have to go become a commander? I mean, like, Riker, like, keeps not being... Riker was the only one who knew that you should never become a captain.
Exactly. That's the real reason. He didn't accept anything.
He's what, 4 times?
Oh.
Captain, like, 4 or 5 times or something ridiculous like that.
He knows.
That man has no ambition.
That's why it killed me when it had, like, the Transporter Riker episode where he meets Thomas, and it's like, oh, like, because I had more ambition. I'm like, did you, though? Did you?
Oh, actually, this is one thing that I was thinking about the other day that I wanted to mention about Discovery since we're talking about Riker. Discovery, I will say this, it is the only one without a womanizer. It is the only show that doesn't have an unnecessary womanizer in it, and I really appreciate that, because I'm just like, don't need the guy who gets alien tail every other episode. I'm over it. It's the 21st century. We don't need that shit.
I don't hate it. Like, I really have nothing against that trope.
But it's so nice to not have it. I'm just like, it's not necessary. And at this point, I was just, I finally realized it when I was, like I said, when I was rewatching all these things, and I was like, wow, every series has had a man who's literally one of their personality traits is,
I sleep with lots of ladies.
Yeah, and I'm just like, okay, you could either have a female, I mean, you kind of had a female woman, like, female personizer with Dax.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Dax went on, so she would just date everybody all the time, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was that. But, I mean, aside from that, it was like, even in the pilot, you're introduced to these people who are just like, you are the person who just sleeps with, and I'm so glad that that trope is just not being, you know, I mean, Lorca everyone, like, seems to sleep with someone at some point, but it's not like, this is the character that does that. It's like, no, some people, Lorca sleeps with his ex-girlfriend who's an admiral, sort of, you know, like, Michael gets a relationship, Culbert's in a, like, although, actually, this actually kind of bugged me. Why were they partners and not married?
I don't know. I don't know.
Especially now, I'm just kind of like, okay, it's legal in, like, a lot of, like, you didn't need to, there's no reason to make people partners at this point.
For me, like, I've noticed, maybe this is just me because I am married right now, I've noticed that a lot of media kind of has this reticence to marriage. Maybe it's because I'm a huge part of the comic community, and there was actually a memo that was circulated at one point at one of the companies that was like, no marriages, nobody's getting married to anybody. Like, there almost seems to be this idea that marriage is almost like a plot killer. Like, if the characters are married, then what will they do? Like,
Miles got married, and that was lots of fun for many, many seasons.
Yes.
Oh, poor Keiko.
I know.
Oh, poor thing. I'm trying to think who else got married. Cisco got married.
Cisco got married at the end. Like, yeah.
And that was like a whole plot arc thing. I don't think anyone else. Dax and Worf got married, and that had some plot stuff.
That had some interesting plot stuff.
Yeah. Actually, now that I think about it, it's really just DS9 where people got married. I'm like, did anyone get married in any other series? I'm thinking.
It's also hard because Star Trek's always walk that awkward line about the fact that they are kind of military vessels and everybody is working with each other, despite what Roddenberry said, where he was like, oh, it's not a military system, like, then why do they have ranks, and like, but whatever. Picard had that really good episode where it dealt with the fact where he wanted to date the head of stellar cartography, and it was like, oh, but I'm the captain, it's altering how I'm treating you, and like all that stuff, and that was part of Janeway's reasoning about why she would never date Chakotay. She was like, oh, but I'm his superior officer, that wouldn't work, and I was like, but extenuating circumstance. But that's beside the point. But so like there is that awkward, because then we're trying to bring that realism in of like, oh, co-workers working together. But I'm like, yeah, but deep space mission, like this is all it's complicated. Yeah. I'm like, the Orville had a married couple on it. Come on. Like,
I haven't watched the Orville.
I actually really like it.
It's funny because that's one of those things. I've read so many things that are like, don't watch Discovery, watch the Orville if you really love Star Trek. And I'm just kind of like, this is making me not want to watch the Orville just because I'm like, you guys are being jerks and I don't like supporting that. I don't like supporting the people who are just being all like, no, this is the real thing. I'm like, okay, technically no. And B, like,
I kind of get it. I get it. Well, and one, because anybody can watch the Orville. So like more people have seen it. Tonally, it feels like an early like Star Trek series. Like if something was to follow like TNG like a little after it, it very much has that tone. It has that episodic format. It has that focus on like morality based plots a lot of the time, but mixed in with like really stupid character moments. And it even has little details like, you know those stupid future cups that they always have on Star Trek where they're all awkwardly shaped and like square at the bottom, round, like it even has that. And I'm like, so it has these little tiny details where I'm like, it's clear the person who made this really loved Star Trek. And I think that's what people are picking up on. The fact that there are all these really tiny details that indicate this great love for the source material. And I feel like that's what some people feel is lacking from Discovery, a love. Like, and I think that Discovery is trying to do its own thing. And I do think that it definitely likes Trek. I don't think it hates Trek. I don't think this is Man of Steel where like it hates Superman. Like it's not that, but I do understand that some people, I think, were looking for more of that, I guess, I don't know if it's nostalgia or what, or just, I guess some people don't
Well, it's fan fiction. From what you're describing, Orville is basically a giant socially acceptable fan fiction.
Well, not really, because, like, they do have their own stuff, and they actually redo some kind of Trek episodes really well. I guess, actually, that would be a good way to put it. Like, their holodeck is my favorite holodeck ever, but... Because it's actually how people, I think, would use the holodeck. But instead of how they always use it on Trek, which is like nonsensical, like giant historical reenactments. Because who doesn't want to be a peasant in Ireland?
Yeah. Well, it's the nice version where they can leave and go to where there's like running water and stuff.
Yeah. So it's like, the Orville, I think, is worth watching. It's not amazing. I'm like, no, it's a comedy sci-fi series that does have some heartfelt moments and it does have some like thoughtful moments. I'm like, maybe that's in the way it feels like Trek to a lot of people, in that it's fun and that they're having a good time. It's like sometimes they think about stuff, sometimes they don't. It does get McFarlane-y at times. I'm not gonna lie. Like there are some times where the jokes are very topical, and those are some of my less favorite jokes, but they're all also like the little sci-fi things, like how their robot Isaac is based off the model of the cover of Isaac Asimov's iRobot, the first edition. And I'm like,
please tell me that they put in the 3 laws, because I do not understand why we don't have... Everyone's like, oh, this is like why they're gonna kill him. Like, dude, reread Isaac Asimov. He came up with a whole plan on why the robots are not gonna kill us.
We can implement it. Dudes. It's not hard. They also have like a sludge like creature that's trying to get with the doctor, and it's so Odo Kira, but like what it would actually be like, that I'm kind of loving it. It's so awkward.
I'm trying to think, like, I have mixed feelings about the Odo Kira relationship. I thought they did it okay, but it was...
Yeah, I don't love the Kira and Odo relationship. Actually, the actress felt that they wouldn't have gotten together, but she'd already said no to Ducat, so she was like, well, I guess, like, I'll give you this.
Well, thank goodness for that, especially since he was boning her mom. Like...
I know. Like, chemistry-wise, I shipped Kira and Ducat. plot-wise, it's awful. I'm like, so no, don't do it. But like the actors had such good.
They
chemistry.
did have a lot of, yeah, that's true. But I mean, it would have been, well, he was super into her, and he was very much actively trying to make it a thing.
And it was like for a while, she was kind of like warming up to him a bit, especially after the daughter and everything. But then I was like, no, he was like the head of. It's not going to work. No.
No.
We can't do this.
It's funny because I read an article about the episode where he goes insane and is like talking to people.
Yes.
And the first draft of that was like actually him in his fantasy world where he was with Kira, and like, you know, Cisco like was like, you know, you are the greatest, and was like, you know, looked up and admired him and stuff. And it was like, I'm like, and I'm really sad they didn't make that episode because that would have been really interesting.
It would have been. Well, actually, my husband just texted me that he has returned. So alas, we must stop talking about Trek. But I hope we covered most of what you wanted to talk about Discovery-wise. So
absolutely.
And it was fun. It was fun to talk with somebody who's actually seen Discovery. Yay!
Yes, no one has seen it. Oh man, I know, right?
Oh.
Well, hopefully we didn't give too many spoilers out. I apologize.
No, like I think we were oblique enough. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I'm glad we finally did it. So yay.
Yes. Third time is the charm.
Yes.
Made it work.
Awesome.
So. All right, and then for everyone, yes, seriously for serious, and you can read the article we talked about that I put, that I wrote on Discovery, and I have my, earlier this week I did the Great Pilot Cage Match, where I ranked all of the pilots. So if you're interested in Star Trek, I've got some stuff for you.
Awesome.
So.
Yes, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye. If you made it to the end, you as always are troopers. Let me know you made it here by telling me if you have seen Star Trek Discovery, and if so, what do you think about it? And of course, have your opinions changed over time? It has been a while. Share all of your thoughts down below. I always enjoy doing these Fanversations as it's a chance to chat with you guys. One-on-one, face-to-face, share some of those opinions that we're always talking about. There are, as always, more videos coming soon. Traditional fandom videos, shipping, fic recs, and more. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. I will see you all soon, and until then, let's get to the outro. Bye-bye. This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to all of my patrons, names on the side, for helping to make these videos possible, and for helping us streamline and determine content. There are, as always, more videos coming soon, so until then, stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.